तथापि दुर्लभम। हमारे उत्साह, हमारी स्पिरिट से बढ़कर के दुनिया में कोई फोर्स नहीं होता। उत्साह परम बलम।
Prarambh, Utsaha Param Balam. Taking inspiration from Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision. Let us ignite the next major movement for startups. Let's celebrate the ideas and the excitement. Let's exchange awareness and knowledge. Let's expand the horizons. Let's establish accolades. Let's embrace. Let us initiate. Prarambh, Utsaha, Parambalam. Startup India International Summit.
We are live.
Okay, good morning, everyone. We are actually celebrating 4 years of Startup India. But before we start, allow me to celebrate what 6 of us created in 1976, HCL, in a Barsati. And yesterday we crossed $10 billion of revenue with a 30 billion market cap. Well, today my co-founder, Shiv, is one of the biggest philanthropists in India. And Desh, of course, is a big philanthropist too. And I guess all of you around us
We've lost Ajay, right?
Yeah, I think he should be signing in, I think.
Maybe we can carry this forward while he logs in.
Yeah. Divya, you want us to move on?
I think he's just.
I'm back.
Okay, good, Ajay.
Okay.
Yep.
Go up, you could take over. Okay, so can you all hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
Ajay.
this is okay.
Broken up. I'm afraid it's broken.
Okay. It's broken. Can you hear me, Desh?
Yes. Yes, we can hear you.
Vineet, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sonam, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so please put on your videos. Okay. So basically, as I was saying, the objective of this session is to bring champions who created organizations and had an impact on society. And the whole objective was that what they had was to bring positive, measurable social change through their work and investments into the social sector. Their inspiring journeys will influence startups to look at creating social sector enterprises. So let me introduce first of all, let me introduce Desh. Desh is the chairman of Sparta Group and is also the chairman of Tejas Networks. And he's a founder of the Deshpande Foundation, a global philanthropic organization nurturing innovation and entrepreneurship in universities and cities across the US, Canada, and India. Let me then introduce Vineet Rai. Vineet, can you please tell me, can you hear me? Everybody can hear me?
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah, so Vineet was funded by Swati, his wife, to chase his vision of using entrepreneurs to solve problems of livelihood and vulnerability of the rural Indians. Started with a seed capital of rupees 5,000 and his wife's investment of rupees 1 lakh. Avishkar Group is one of the largest impact platforms in Asia and the largest impact fund in India and manages assets around $1.5 billion. Let me then introduce Sonam. Sonam is a very, very interesting person. I'm sure you would love hearing from him. He has been instrumental in changing the face of education and in the Ladakh region through SECMOL by introducing child-centered, language-relevant, and participative school models. The initiative is responsible for a massive decrease in school dropout rates among Ladakhi children. Sonam is the recipient of several awards, and recently he won the Raymond Magsaysay Award. Pramod is a professional and his entrepreneurial journey is absolutely amazing. He started in the financial services and the business process area, and he built Genpact, one of the largest organizations in this area. And he recently founded Asha Impact Fund, which is focused on social impact investments in advocacy. So with that, I would now like to invite each of my fellow panelists to talk a little bit.
Yeah, I think Ajay is having some problems with this audio. So, we need, maybe I will do a little bit of my journey. As I was just saying, I just celebrated my 70th, which means the older you get, longer is your resume. I left India in 1973 after IIT Madras. And then, I was fortunate enough to have a career in Prarambh, startup world, did a whole bunch of companies. But in the last 15, 20 years, our focus has turned to more working with the people who are not a part of that ecosystem, more of the people at the bottom of the pyramid. The thrust of our effort has been, when we were working on the high end of the marketplace, where people have a lot of disposable income, you have to compete for that opportunity. And when you compete, execution excellence is given. You have to be, if you don't execute, you die. But in the process of that competition, sometimes companies and people lose their empathy for the surrounding and the people. So there is execution excellence, but sometimes there is a lack of empathy. And whereas in the nonprofit world, there is absolute empathy, but not a lot of execution excellence. So a lot of our effort has been trying to bring execution excellence to the compassion of the nonprofits and bring a little bit of that compassion back to the for-profit world.
Okay, so maybe now I would request Pramod to talk a little about his journey. You are on
Pramod,
mute.
you're
Pramod.
muted.
Sorry, it's the most oft-repeated phrase in Zoom world. You're on
Correct.
mute. What a pleasure and a privilege to be here. Thank you, Ajay, and thank you to my panelists and the audience for listening in. My journey is we are the pioneers of the business process outsourcing industry, and I was fortunate enough to have come up with that idea and built it up as Genpact over time, and Ajay, congratulations on HCL. What a wonderful achievement. I'm also very proud that Genpact is now $4.5 billion or so in revenues and about $10 billion in market cap, or $9 billion. So it's been a wonderful journey. As we came out of that journey, I partnered with Vikram Gandhi, my partner at Asha Impact. Vikram currently teaches impact investment at Harvard Business School and was formerly with Morgan Stanley and Credit Suisse, and is a wonderful entrepreneur as well as a wonderful philanthropist. I recently joined, Living My Promise, the pledge to give up at least 50% of whatever wealth I have, because I felt very strongly that when you live in a country like India, the needs of our country are so humongous. Our own personal needs become dwarfed. And Vineet, I completely sympathize and hear what I've heard, that your course was changed by your wife. I felt the same way, that the purpose of wealth cannot just be to keep the money. It has to be much greater than that. You have to do something with it. Otherwise, wealth is meaningless. When we talk about impact investment, and that's the key topic I wanted to touch on, which is what we have looked at Asha Impact, it has been clear to me that India needs a massive dose of impact investment. I know this word is becoming more and more popular around the world, more and more people are focused on it, but in a country like India, we're going to solve our problems around health, education, pollution, water, urbanization, only by the extension of impact investments into these areas. It is astonishing that with the amount of money available in the world, that more of this money isn't yet flowing into impact investment. And there are two other elements to this which I would add. One, in India, most investments, if done thoughtfully and with appropriate hand-holding and mentorship, can yield excellent results. Impact investment doesn't mean you have to sacrifice a significant portion of returns. You can do, we have certainly looked at Asha Impact, looked at many impact investments we've done, where in some cases we've got 3 to 4 times our money back. In other cases, perhaps the results were more muted. But at the broad level, we do believe impact investments can give you the same return. It may take a little longer, it may take a little more extra effort, it may take a little more leap of faith, perhaps. But in a country like ours, that's what we need. How are you going to deliver healthcare to the rest of India if it's not going to be through means which are outside of hospitals? Because 90% of India lives outside, doesn't go to the hospital to get to get treated. Many such instances that we can go through. Apart from that, in this age of technology, impact investment complemented with technology can reach all those far-off places across India where nobody could do business earlier. So if you look at financial inclusion, if you look at the advent of technology being used in every other area of irrigation and pollution and agriculture, that technology coupled with impact investment can make the biggest impact on our country as we go forward, bigger perhaps than just the creation of jobs in the regular capitalistic-led economy, which we also love. I'm not decrying it, but there is a huge role for impact investment. And if we speak of anything, my one request would be, please think of it as a mainstream impact investment channel with support of government, with support of CSR funds, with the normal support that we need, because we need this kind of capital. Otherwise, it will take far too long for us to solve the problems of India without capital that thinks about impact far more seriously than we have done in the past. Thank you, Ajay.
Thank you, Pramod. That was wonderful. You've actually set the pace for this session, and I really wanted this to come out. May I now request Sonam to take over from here?
Hi, can you hear my voice? And
Yes, we can.
is it
Yes, we
okay?
can.
We're
Yeah,
facing
sure.
some problem. Okay, so yeah, I have been in Ladakh for the last since my childhood, and mainly in education reforms after my mechanical engineering, which was inspired by Ladakh's challenges with cold and dark winters and cold winters. And I was moved by the state of education while doing my engineering, because I had to finance my education. So I had to teach students. That brought me face to face with the system of education, which made me think that the world needs, better education system than another engineer lining up for queues for employment. So I started an educational movement here to bring more sense, more relevance of the education system to the life in these high mountains where hardly anything resembles, what is given in the textbooks. Even the language is alien. So failure was rampant. 95% used to fail. So we started a movement with students, mainly failures, to change this scenario, and soon it was 75% success. But soon I saw that just passing exams doesn't help anybody. They are still handicapped actually, especially because it is all theory and nothing hands-on. So therefore I say handicapped. So we started a special school for those who were failing in this system to show what education can do. And at this school, we have been helping those who have failed to do much more than just succeed. They have been solving the problems of Ladakh, whether it is cold winters with solar energy. The room I'm sitting in now has 25 degrees centigrade, while the minimum outside was minus 18 or something in the morning, without any heating except the sun. Similarly, water issues and with artificial glaciers and so on. So, but people, charity is a very ineffective way. So we started floating entrepreneurs out of our students and other young people. So entrepreneurship has become a mode. So today, for building such solar houses, rather than me doing some charity, these entrepreneurs go and design and build and make a good creative living. But then soon realized that without sustainability is like playing football without rules of goal. Just run there, it doesn't work. So then I got into sustainability ideas to make businesses and lifestyles more sustainable, so that we don't lose our glaciers in the mountains, and the planet stays longer in a healthy form. So that's what my journey has been. Happy to be connecting on this startup journey of the nation. Thank you.
Thank you. So may I now request Vineet to go through his journey and
Thank you, Ajay, for having me. Exceptional panel. I have been a great follower of Desh's journey. Had a privilege of meeting him in Hubli and seeing firsthand what can be achieved by leadership. I've known Pramod as well. And Sonam, I have been a big follower of yours. Almost everybody probably sees your videos, so do I, but I have been watching and following you for quite some time. My journey was quite simple. I'm a forester, used to live in a forest, and then got married. Wife showed me the way path out of the forest. And then also, when I actually told her that I want to quit my job after setting up India's first incubator, probably first incubator, to do something where we can harness the entrepreneurial energy of an average Indian to create jobs where people live. I had in my journey, I had observed that, especially both in the forest and outside, that almost every Indian wants to become rich. I couldn't find a single poor Indian who wanted to stay poor, even though outside the rich people celebrated poverty and used to look all the good things about poverty. So I found that tension in the aspirations of the poor and the way the rest of the power used to look at poverty. And what appeared to me very clearly was that if you start a business, and if that business has the motivation to engage the poor in the business itself, you can create a significant amount of impact. And some of it was actually very relevant and very evident when COVID struck. Millions of people walked, and they walked from where they were to where they come from, simply because there were no jobs from where they come from. So my aspiration was to create jobs and livelihoods where people live. And then I started looking for what was the gap, and money seemed to be the only gap. India was largely, and I'm talking about 2000, 2001, India was largely a debt market. Everybody used to say, take money and then actually give returns immediately. I could never understand how that's possible because I could never do that. And so it was very evident to me that equity was needed. But in 2001, India didn't have much venture capital. So for somebody to say, give me equity, we will give it to young people in rural India to create a business, it sounded very absurd. My journey took some time, took 6-7 years to get the $1 million. And in 2008, a term that some of us, 4 or 5 of us put together, coined, called impact investing. Because we were all calling ourselves by different names. And I quickly realized, and most of us realized, that capital actually requires mandate. And mandate can only go by a single name. So me calling myself social investor and somebody calling themselves a micro venture fund does not gel well in the international global capital lexicon. And so impact investing since then has, in some sense, reflected what we are doing. Pramod defined impact investing beautifully. What we are trying to do today is create an impact platform where we are providing equity, debt, and all kinds of ecosystem building support for entrepreneurs who don't come from the mainstream. I think in the last 5-6 years, startup itself has become a culture. In some sense, we are a subsidiary or an ancillary to what is happening in mainstream India. I think the only thing that we bring specialized to the thought process is what you can do in Bangalore can also be done in Patna, Banaras, Jharkhand, Orissa, Bihar, Northeast, Ladakh. And for that, you need to have a much higher risk appetite and probably an ability to attract talent, media, and other stuff, in addition to teaching governance and dealing with local challenges. As you know, if you are in Bangalore, setting up a company is very different from setting up a company in probably any of the low-income states. And we want to create some level of parity, given that a large percentage of India's population actually live in low-income states. So that's really the motivation. As we discuss further, I would be able to reflect very in a more detailed manner on the specific questions.
Wonderful, Vineet. What a journey. Outstanding. Desh, may I start with some questions now with all the panelists? So Desh, I'd like to start with you. Your foundation is working in the mass area, as you call it. And does that give you an edge for rural transformation? And how do you envision what is stored in this decade, particularly post-COVID situation, where the gap between metro and non-metros have reduced significantly?
Yeah, thank you, Ajay, for the question. I think just to echo the sentiments of Pramod, Vineet, and Sonam, sustainability is very important for all these interventions. And because it's billions of people, and unless you scale, it's not social entrepreneurship. It's more like social work if you help 5 or 10 people. So to make anything financially sustainable, there's only 3 sources of income. Either it's charity, it's a government program, or a free market economy. And the more you go to the bottom, the more it has to be a combination of all the 3. So the role of the philanthropy in the government should be to lead to free market solutions so that people can embrace and we can scale those solutions. And that's where impact investing comes in. I can give you one example. One of the biggest multipliers of income for farmers is water. So when Ratan Tata had come to our program in Hubli in 2013, we talked about it and he said, hey, why don't you take 5 machines and see if you can do it? So the next 2 years was a phase where it was total philanthropy. We just did 150 of those farm ponds, which is a 100 feet by 100 feet by 12 feet hole, which irrigates 5 acres of land and doubles and triples the income of the farmer. So we learned how to do the farm pond and also ensure that the farmer actually makes a lot more money. Over the last 6 years, we've done 6,000 of them. And a typical farm pond costs about 80,000. Farmer pays 55,000, and we, meaning us and other CSR people, pay the 25,000. And this month, we're just launching a 100,000 farm pond program where the farmer pays 20,000 and the banks give 60,000 loan. And so it's a self-sustaining program. So it's an 800 crore program. So I think, I can see it becoming 8,000, 80,000. So I think the only way you can scale these things is like by what other panelists are saying. You have to look for investing in that sector and also make the solutions more sustainable. And the philanthropic money should be used to develop these interventions and also raise the income of the people so that they can start participating in this free market economy.
Great, thank you, Desh. Maybe now I'll ask Pramod to take on from here. You started talking about the whole idea of impact investments. How can we attract significantly more capital into India? Because I think there are some issues that are there. So maybe you could throw some light on those.
Yes, I think, Ajay, there's a lot of issues out there. No question about it. One is exactly what Vineet was saying. How do people think about impact investment? Are they aware of the possibilities? Are they aware of the returns that you can get from it? So the first one to me is very much around saying that impact investment is not necessarily going to deliver worse returns than normal investment. In fact, it can deliver very good returns, but perhaps you have to have a little more patience, a little more perseverance, and a little more sustenance. So you have to be able to hold the hands of those companies better, particularly in the rural areas, help them create industries in the smaller towns, help them build their enterprises with all the core management instincts that you would want them to do so that they can scale. There is so much capital available in the world today, and a large pool of that capital is now veering towards thinking about impact investment. So pretty much any fund that you talk to will tell you that they're allocating a certain amount of money for impact investment. But the problem today, and I think Vineet will also agree with me, is there is no room to really channel that because people are looking to channel that in big dollops or too big of amount, whereas the actual act of making those investments is going to be somewhat painfully slow. When we work with Asha Impact, we're seeing multiple opportunities to put money down, but every one of them requires very different thinking, requires a leap of faith sometimes, requires us to think about what the end output measure is going to be, and requires us to have faith that we will get there. Let me give you an example. In healthcare, India is not going to solve its healthcare problem by producing more doctors and nurses and hospitals. It's just too much. It would take us too long. The only way you're going to be able to solve this is by building rural healthcare outreach programs, telehealth clinics, healthcare assistants who can walk the mountains, who can walk to various places and deliver healthcare remotely with doctors at the back end through satellite systems, through drones, through the use of technology to deliver medicines. We need changes and the government to recognize that this is the kind of impact investment which should get CSR recognition, should get other tax benefits if they can give it, because these are the last mile programs that will actually solve the problem. So as we have funded or are looking at some of these investments, I am doing this personally, it's very clear that it will take us a few years just to get to 3-4 years just to get to break even. While you get to the villages, you increase the awareness where you have them think about what you're doing, have them recognize the credibility of your program. And then, yes, you can build a really solid business, a scalable business as a result. So time becomes an issue. You need dollars for investments into technology. But the key message I would love to send out to people is that you can earn excellent returns. At Asha Impact, we have made returns of 2 or 3 times our investment from companies which finance low-cost schools. We've invested into companies which are focused on recycling waste material in smaller towns. We've invested into companies which provide services and feeds and seeds to agriculturalists and to farmers. In every one of these cases, what we've seen is actually a very, very viable platform. But to Desh's point, it can't be social work. We have to find ways to expand it. And for that, we need significant investment. We will need debt, we will need mezzanine, we will need equity, all of that coming together. And I hope all of us in India can start thinking about building more impact investment platforms as we go forward, because we need many more to achieve. We need many more Vinith to achieve what we want to achieve. There's enough capital overseas. The last one I'll just make Ajay quickly is that the ability to raise capital from the world is something that we all have to get behind in an orchestrated manner, to go out, speak at forums. I know, Vinith, you do this all the time, but we need to speak at forum, use the help of Desh and others like him who have such a great voice, to go out to the people and explain why this is an area they have to look at as importantly, if perhaps a little differently from normal investments that they may do through private equity. There's many hurdles, but I honestly believe this is one of the great opportunities lying ahead of India. We certainly at Asha also will think about expanding our operations significantly, perhaps by setting up a fund, perhaps by doing a lot more in this area than we've done in the past, both through investment and through advocacy. Sorry, and I said last one. Advocacy is important. Working for regulatory change as part of this impact investment is important. Pretty much the last mile effort, pretty much moving into the smaller towns, pretty much moving into these key areas, all require regulatory change of some kind or the other. In healthcare, it's delivery of medicine, remote diagnostics. In education, it's relief from some of the rules that we have and minimum sizes that we have. You can go on and on. But I think more of us get together, we will solve for this. Thank you, Ajay.
Thank you. Thank you. Sonam, I'd like to ask you a little more about your how you've revolutionized the whole education system and how you're bringing around sort of socio-economic transformation in the remotest part of the country.
Can you hear me? Hello? I hope you can hear me. There's some problem here.
Yes, yes. Speak a little louder, please.
Okay. So the transformation in education is definitely key to transforming the country. But I think it's not just in remote rural areas that you want or need transformation. It's needed throughout. Urban areas in their own ways and rural areas in their own ways. How we describe education is not as 3 R's, but rather 3 H's, we call them: head, heart, and hand. This is where we lack a lot. Volume. Just a minute. Volume.
Sonam, we are having trouble listening to you. Could you put off your video and just stop? Put off your video, please.
No.
Then it'll come through better. Put off your video, then we can hear you better.
I think problem with the video, there's some echo. Is it better now? Or do you have problems with video?
If you just put off your video, it'll be better.
I'll do it. We are trying with 2 systems because one is not working.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So I was saying that education should be seen not just as reading, writing, arithmetic, which is like all to do with your head. It is more the development of head, yes, important, but also hands and heart. And that's where we lack one of these. In the rural areas, we have a lot of practical hands-on approach among young people, thanks to school, or actually no thanks to school. The life there teaches you to be practical. And that's why you see jugaad rather than innovation. Jugaad, because you have good experiential learning, but not enough academic rigor. So you become halfway innovators. But in the urban areas, it's the opposite. you have too much of head and none of hands. So you become handicapped. And that's why India is lagging behind, I feel. The rural areas lack the head part, and the urban areas lack the hands part. And out here in Ladakh, what we try is that you not only get high-end academic, nutrition of your head, but also experiential learning. And when you do that, our students who have come to us as multiple times failures have gone out as quite big entrepreneurs, who are leading the whole region, whether it is in tourism or fruit pulps and, yak cheese and all such fields. So that's how we believe applying education to solve real life problems and making from it entrepreneurship, the livelihoods out of it, is how we try and solve the issues. So, for example, I told you about how cold winters are, but several of our students are making a great life out of providing solutions, for civilians, for government, for the Indian Army. And it can be much bigger and a win-win, because the entrepreneurs get their livelihood and a satisfying one. On the other hand, the people, the clients, get rid of the hellish winter that you have in a place like Ladakh, and the environment smiles because the military, for example, will be burning so much less fossil fuels, which is what they use right now to keep their forces warm. So like that was just an example. Like that, you can apply what you learn in school to make a living out of. For example, this whole solar heated building thing is out of your 9th grade chapter on heat, conduction, convection, radiation. We just put it to use and make a business out of it and solve the people's problem.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sonam. Vineet, my first question would be, can you just sort of differentiate a little between impact investing and normal investing, and this whole issue of risk and return? How would you sort of distinguish, and how do you take ESG into consideration?
I think very simply put, investments, when they started off, you just want to make money by riding an entrepreneur. Then over time, investments also started looking at whether the entrepreneur has corporate governance, because people siphoned off money, etc. So ethics became important. And at some point of time, people started questioning, does the company in which you have made an investment actually has some level of governance, some level of contribution to society, and the product and services they produce do not impact. And that became an ESG. So this is the evolution. Impact is actually investing, activity of investing with a lens. So you go in saying, I want to see this kind of a job being created in this geography with such kind of people. So you are not looking to do an experiment and then learn. You are stating boldly right up front that I want to create jobs for low income people. Now the entrepreneur has to meet that criteria for you to make an investment. But the criteria is not that the entrepreneur will not make money. The entrepreneur can make as much money as we want. And we, as investors, also do not restrict any amount of returns. The problem is doing this, that is working with low-income people and generating jobs for them or livelihoods for them, is a very challenging task. And therefore, in a natural course, an entrepreneur would not like to do it until unless you are very motivated, and then people follow social work / philanthropy mode. Impact investing, therefore, is a sustainable way of trying to do things that can be done sustainably through philanthropy as well. And as Desh pointed out, sometimes philanthropy has to do some base work before impact investing can become relevant. Impact investing is not a panacea to all problems. It has a huge opportunity to address the challenges that the government and philanthropy sector face, especially in the area of sustainability. I have 4 points to make, which I want the country to look at. As we are in Prarambh, which is also talking about Startup India, what is happening in impact investing is a fairly significant sliver of Startup India. Unfortunately, this would require a slightly different focus. Like investing and impact investing are almost parallel, Startup India and what needs to be done in the startup ecosystem for impact investing are parallel to each other, not necessarily exclusive, but parallel. My personal belief is there is a significant amount of investment that needs to be done to make sure that entrepreneurs who are fledgling all across the country need same level of support that is provided to entrepreneurs in Mumbai, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai. And for that, we need to actually build local ecosystems. This is actually pretty much in line with what Niti Aayog is doing by creating and encouraging incubators on the spot. I think the second challenge that Pramod actually really articulated well is there is a lot of global capital that in a post-COVID world is very sensitive toward risks that are emanating from social / climate / any other risks that are not seen by the normal commercial agents. So they want to allocate a significant amount of capital that could help them deal with the future risks. Now, this capital is in multi-billions of dollars. This is not small capital. Just to give you an idea, some of the largest funds in the world, which are pension funds with 1.5 trillion, 2 trillion, and $1 trillion, and they want to allocate 2, 3, or 4% to impact investing. India is the global laboratory for impact investing to scale, because as the second populous country and world's 40% SDG target, Sustainable Development Goals target, India is globally very important if the world has to achieve its targets of 2030 to have a world without hunger, without poverty, without inequity. If India and government of India can internalize this thought process, and like they have set up National Innovation Infrastructure Fund, can actually convince NIF to set up a joint venture or a fund for impact investing, $1 billion, $2 billion, $10 billion for impact investing. There are enough and more Vineets and Pramods and others who are willing to set up funds to be the last mile connectors. So there is no dearth of impact investors in India who would be willing to receive this capital and strengthen and build those companies. I think, therefore, my humble submission to any government officer who's listening to it is there is a need for us to set up a fund of fund so that that global money that is in large quantities can be channeled into smaller quantities to people like us so that we can work with these entrepreneurs. And the final thing, and there is a lot of work needs to be done, and Vikram, who is Pramod's partner, is actually doing an exceptional job on that, is how do you distinguish, and this is actually a question that government keeps asking, how do I distinguish between any investment and an impact investment? Yes, it's important, but let's not make the best the enemy of the better. There are some very simple ways in which you can actually make a distinction between what is impact and what is not impact. However, if you try to make very hard lines, you will make it impossible for people to make significant impact. Generally, the world starts from the lowest fruit and then moves to the most difficult one. By creating hard lines, we may actually discourage people or entrepreneurs to move into impact investing. So my humble submission to any regulator who is listening, that this requires regulation, but require low touch and soft regulation. I completely understand. And therefore, you have to encourage better ethics, better governance, better transparency. And there is enough and more that has happened. And if government can encourage it through creation of funds, I think we can make a significant progress in this space.
Thank you, Vinay. I'll go back to Desh. Desh, so therefore, what are the challenges and threats and weaknesses that social entrepreneurs must address if they are to thrive in this sort of a social tech startup space in India?
Ajay, if you look back at our journeys in entrepreneurship, like when you started at CL, there was no ecosystem, right? I mean, there was hardly maybe 2-3 entrepreneurs in the whole town, I think. And so it was a tough battle. But come 5 decades later, we've really figured out how to build the ecosystem and reduce the friction for people with good ideas and good business plans and so on. So now that ecosystem is developed. But that ecosystem does not exist for the social entrepreneurship. And that's the huge opportunity for India. And as Vineet was saying, we have to look at it both ways. I used to co-chair a council for Obama on innovation entrepreneurship. And we always looked at it as a 4-pronged strategy. You need access, you need good entrepreneurs, you need good ideas, you need good access to capital, and you need good access to market. So if you are the social entrepreneur, you have to develop those entrepreneurial skills. And those capabilities have to be developed by promoting more people like Sonam, who actually are on the ground really spreading this gospel about entrepreneurship and building the capabilities. But if you're a policymaker, you really have to work on reducing that friction. How do you come up with regulations to really provide more access to capital and access to market and so on? And India is probably one of the most exciting places, like Vineet was saying. I think India probably has maybe 2-3% of the population now, which is millions and millions, who are globally just as competent or more competent than anybody else globally, which was not the case when I left India in 1973, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's engineering or law or doctors, anything. So it's really a fantastic intersection of huge amount of capabilities and also huge amount of problems. And I'm so excited that people on this panel are now trying to connect the two sides, because we have to connect the two sides. Otherwise, we will create lots of ideas and there'll be no capacity among the people who need it to absorb it, or we'll have social workers really working with that class of people, but they don't have access to bigger platforms like the regular innovation entrepreneurship has. And so it's a very exciting moment for India, and I hope people who are setting the policies and regulations really take this opportunity to build on it and hopefully make a big difference within a short period of time.
Thank you, Desh. Pramod, how does Asha Impact make a difference here, for example, both in terms of advocacy and investments?
So advocacy is interesting, Ajay. There are key areas where I hope organizations like us can help. For instance, in skilling and skilling and entrepreneurship. We are working with a variety of governments, certainly the Delhi government at this point in time, where we're helping set up a skills university, because I really believe the current effort around skills is not being as effective as it needs to be. We hope we can do this with many other state governments, which is draw the blueprint of how skilling needs to get done. What we've seen being done over the last 5-7 years, I don't think has resulted in the types of outcomes that we would have liked. So one is thinking about that, and then coupling that as much as we can with impact investment bonds and financial instruments that allow you to finance these activities, linking both to returns in terms of money as well as in outcomes. So I think in areas like that, we have been. We're also very, very keen to work with state governments and other players on the entire innovation mission within states. Innovation in India and startups, by nature, and I accept this, have happened in pockets: Bangalore, Pune, Gurgaon, Noida, etc. Some places outside. But there is no reason why grassroots innovation cannot be promoted in many other states. So we work with Punjab, we work with other states. Something I intend to get you roped into, Ajay, is some of the innovation missions that we're working on, where we are trying to build an ecosystem where we are helping the locals. We work jointly with the state government to help build the ecosystem. Now, many people have tried this before. The difference here we're saying is it needs to be a privately led effort, hopefully funded in part by the government, but backed by the government, but really predominantly privately led, because the world tends to buy into that with greater credibility than it does otherwise. On the investment side, we are constantly searching more and more. And I will tell you, it is harder to find these investments than I thought it would be, which look at impact investment and find a business model that works. So we come across many ideas, we come across many great people with commitment, but getting the combination of the idea working with great people with commitment and a business model that they've tried out and that they can go out with is actually a little harder. I can see Vineet smiling, and I think this is the story of our life. But they're out there. And so our aim will be to expand the fund, make it much bigger, bring in more money, thanks to Vikram and Vikram's effort also, as you said, Vineet, he's very, very good at this. And then go and find these companies where they exist today. We're not going to find them necessarily sitting in Mumbai and Delhi. We're going to have to go to the smaller towns, talk to the people, look at entrepreneurship at that level there. But in areas such as skilling, education, health, pollution, garbage collection, all of those things, these are huge areas where I think there is substantial room for really impactful investments.
Thank you, Pramod. Sonam, I'd like to take up a very favorite subject of yours, which is whole idea of critical innovations that we must make to face the future effectively. And you've created this fantastic concept of I Live Simply. So do talk about it a little bit. You're on mute, Sonam. You're on mute.
As we see more and more environmental challenges and climate-related challenges in many parts of the world, particularly in our part where glaciers are melting and water is going to be a huge challenge, people at sea level drowning, we have to think of ways to deal with it. And, businesses or entrepreneurship so far, I feel, are like playing games without rules. We make money, but we don't play by the rules of nature. So if you play volleyball, you score a goal, but you have to hit above the net. You can't touch the net or hit below the net, or else it will be seen as a child's play and, would not be even respected. So I feel life and business today has been like that, just playing under the net like kindergarten children and thinking you have got rich, you have made more money. If we were to clean up the mess we have made, we'd be spending 5 times more of the money that we made. I mean, killing the goose and thinking you will get all of it is a gone thing. So therefore, businesses will have to learn to adapt and do within the boundaries of the rules of nature, even if it doesn't give them 10% GDP, even if it doesn't make us, millionaires, but we'll be able to help people and all living beings survive and thrive in a happier way. So therefore, seeing this among businesses and people living as if there's no tomorrow, all about owning goods and possessions and nothing about keeping the house neat or housekeeping of the planet, made us finally launch a campaign of this sort where we urge people to live simpler lives. This started with us making artificial glaciers, ice stupas. People started making a big news of it and interviews and so on, awards. And I say, this is nothing big to take pride in. This is not something I can brag about. It's a helplessness we are trying to communicate. Ice stupas are not just a water solution. It is also an SOS message to the world that you better change your lifestyle if we are not to face this in the first go, and then soon your turn will come. So therefore, we said, while we make these artificial glaciers, people around the world also need to change their lifestyles and not just, watch ice stupas on a television and entertain themselves. That's the worst use of ice stupas. So therefore, we said, together with it, we launch a movement into which you can participate and you can do your part so that our natural glaciers don't go away and we have to make these artificial ones. This is a sad signal rather than something to be happy about. So this was then designed as a fun movement, not like a preachy, message, but fun thing that young people can associate, young people who constitute the majority of the world and who will inherit the earth, encouraging them to participate. We made it into a crowdfunding campaign where you do not pay or contribute in money because money doesn't help nature. So you have to contribute in behavior change. And the site will translate into equivalent of money if that is what you really care. So we are trying to speak the language people understand. If you pledge to choose bicycles over cars, it can be equated to, say, a $500 contribution. And the site does that for how many times you want to do that.
If you want to choose trains over airplanes, it could be, say, $1,000. If you plan to go vegetarian, it would be a big contribution. So similarly, planting a tree is a huge contribution of, say, $100. And it is actually not less than $100. These are not fictitious amounts. These are real. It would actually be even more. If we had to clean the carbon dioxide from the air, I don't know what kind of plant it will take and how much money it will take. It's just that we are not cleaning up. We are leaving the cleaning up for the next generation and thinking we are making a lot of prosperity. It's all at the expense of future. So therefore, we launched this as a fun thing for young people. So at least while contributing thousands of dollars, they can feel that this is how real economics works. It's not just the money I'll get as salary and I'll spend, but it is also nature, stewardship, which has to be seen as value, as at least as much as your currency, your money. So I would say that so far on this site, ilivesimply.org, some 2,000 people have pledged roughly $15 million worth of pledges, which are not fictitious. If they keep their pledges, there'll be so much value added to the planet. And I would like to say I want to become the richest man in the world in these green dollars. I live simply pledge dollars to surpass Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. And I don't plan to leave this planet to capture another to trash it. I plan to live on this planet Earth and have every earthling come and join and make their billions of dollars of contribution and all become, rich in every way in our lives and in our work and live happily for ourselves and for the future generations. That's what it is.
Thank you, Sonam. That was wonderful. I'll encourage everybody to join this movement. And next, Vineet, I'd like to ask you this, this question about how do you balance ethics versus economics? This whole issue that is always confronting impact investing. And, how do you actually do that?
Yes, I think for that, I may have to actually do a little bit of disaggregation of what is impact and what will be impact investing from our perspective. If there are entrepreneurs in the audience who are actually listening to us, would be thinking, so what does Vineet look for in an entrepreneur? How does he have an ethics meter? Does he actually look at governance? I think it's quite simple. The first thing that we are looking at is looking at an opportunity that is of large size. So I'm talking like an investor for some time. Now, what are the large opportunities? India has tons and tons of waste lying there. You drive out of Mumbai, drive out of Delhi, you will see waste, big Mount Everest of waste coming up all across. Now, when I look at that, I see a big opportunity, massive opportunity. And I'm looking for an entrepreneur who also sees this as an opportunity. But unlike me, he or she has a solution to that problem of waste. So we initially looked at places like, we looked at financial inclusion in 2000s and 2010. Microfinance became a great opportunity at that point of time. And then what you look at is when you identify this opportunity, you look at talent. Are talented people looking to participate in converting or seeking or thinking about this as an opportunity? And finally, what we have learned the hard way is waste is a big problem, not because waste is a problem or talented people have not looked at it. They do not just associate with waste. And second, they don't know how to solve it. What we have realized is technology there plays a role. It makes impossible possible. So if you can look at a large opportunity, you can look at a talented person, and a talented person can somehow bring technology to solve that problem, then you have this beautiful idea of a scalable opportunity where you can create impact. Now, if somebody is trying to make money by cleaning Mumbai and Delhi and Indian cities, and in the process actually saving climate, which is what Sonam is trying to do, and makes $1 billion, then I think it is a win-win-win. Right now, all businesses are working on a win-lose. The business wins, the environment loses. We are trying to look for people who are trying to create a win-win-win solution for everybody. So you have rag pickers who are at the bottom of the societal ladder. Then you have waste, which is actually destroying the environment. And then you have actually somebody who's converting it into wealth. That actually is what we are looking as an opportunity. Now, if you have brought this together, And if you do this without actually getting into bribing, without actually getting into wrong activities, without doing all this by holding yourself responsible, that if you know you are doing something that is damaging and you are willing to go back to your investors and say, hey, listen, I don't think I had the full solution. I only had the 80% solution. I am doing this damage. I may have to take 2 more years before I do exit. And therefore, I will delay the exit plan or expansion plan because my solution is not good. Then that completely becomes an impact investing. If you are a pure play investor who is only looking for a multiple at it, the investor will say, I don't care, you have an 80% thing, just keep scaling up. An impact investor at that point of time has to make a choice and stand up and say, yes, I am an impact investor and I will take the risk of delaying if the promoter believes so. And therefore, it is not just the ethics at the promoters or entrepreneurs level, it is the ethic of the investor also. And I think all of us are found short. Sometimes the entrepreneur is found short, but I would be very honest, there are a lot of impact investors who are also found short when a difficult decision stares them. And this is therefore an evolving activity. I don't think so I will sit on value judgment of whether an impact investor is 100% right. I think we are in an evolving ethics as the society itself tries to fight out of the challenges it has created for itself in the last 100 years. I think we will have to look for society more than individuals. And our investors have to similarly understand. And I think when people talk about do you make money or not, it is not about making money. It is about confronting the evils that we have created over the last 200 years and then erring on the side of caution rather than on being cavalier. And I think that's really the tension that we are talking about. And it's a very difficult tension.
Okay, we've run out of time, so I'm afraid there's so many questions that are there from the audience. And I'm going to actually send those questions out to all of you so that you could answer and send it back to us so we could inform the audience. So I have to actually close now, but I got so involved in what all of you were talking that I totally forgot that there was a time limit. And I guess we could have kept talking for the next 2 hours and still not completed, but I guess we have to now close. So while closing, I would like to thank all of you for having participated today. And I think we need to take this whole concept of impact investing, environment, doing good, and also making sure how do we get more access to global funds to make a lot of this happen. And I think we have to talk to everyone globally to say, look at India as a global lab for impact capital and change things which could be changed easily at all levels, like what Sodam talks about, changing the way you live. Thank you very much. Thanks all of you for being here today. And it's been wonderful talking to you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.
Real pleasure.